Hello and welcome to the third episode of the CleveCast. The CleveCast is a weekly podcast covering all things happening at the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. I am Justin Witte. I am the curator of the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. And this week we're going to continue our Echoes of Edo series as we dive into details surrounding the Hokusai and Ukiyo-e, the Floating World exhibition currently on view at the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. And this week, I'm going to share a little information about one of the pieces on display in the museum galleries from the Kiyosone collection. So when you enter the Cleve Carney Museum of Art galleries, immediately on your right, you'll notice two green vitrine tables, each of which has a large hand scroll rolled out upon it. One depicts the scenes around and inside a kabuki theater, and the other shows kind of the celebration or popular entertainment along the streets in Edo on New Year's. Both of these scrolls are by the artist Miyagawa Chōshun. Now, hand scrolls are different than the hanging scrolls that are in the exhibition. They're similar in that these are some of the one-of-a-kind hand-painted pieces on display. But the hand rolls are laid out horizontally, usually on a flat surface, and they're meant to be viewed by scenes. So they're narrative in nature. So think of them as the Netflix of the day. And these two scrolls depict what I said, the scene outside a kabuki theater and then the celebration on New Year's. We're going to focus on the first scroll, which is the popular entertainment along the streets of the New Year. First, you should know we can only display one section of the scroll at a time. So the section being displayed is not the entire scroll. There's two reasons for that. One, just space. We couldn't have tables that long in the museum space to show the full scroll. But also, with all of these objects, we have to keep in mind the exposure to light. So they can't just show one section regularly in exhibition after exhibition because it may deteriorate unevenly with the rest and it would fade. And that would be a shame for these works. Especially the Chōshuns are incredibly vibrant. In fact, the color has lasted so well, it looks as if they could have been painted 5, 10, 15 years ago. But in fact, they are over 300 years old. The first scroll, the popular entertainment along the streets for the New Year, is from about 1720. And I actually, just today, I was talking to the museum attendants in the museum because they're saying, people come in and they lean on the vitrines. I said, well, when they do that, why don't you remind them that that thing that the vitrine is protecting is older than the U.S. Constitution? And then maybe they would have a little more respect about how they deal with it. And I think a lot of people come and don't realize the age. One, because maybe they're not expecting it. But also because the figures are so stylized, the colors are so bright, they're so playful. This hand scroll is so playful that it doesn't seem that old. If you think about, work that you may think from the 1700s, maybe like really stuffy portraits, really, dramatic lighting, very still, not very playful, and definitely not depicting everyday life in the way that these scrolls do. So the depiction of the New Year's events in the streets of Edo by Chōshun shows a bunch of people playing instruments, people of different ages, different backgrounds, and kind of this celebratory event for New Year's. And notably in another part of the scroll that unfortunately is not on display, you also see a depiction of the New Year lion dance. So it's a really wonderful depiction of the way music and kind of celebration was part of everyday life in this Edo period. And that is the reason these handscrolls are included in that first gallery of the museum, because that is the section that focuses on the performing arts, music, dance, and theater of the Edo period. Now, what's interesting about this hand scroll is that it depicts popular entertainment that's happening in the street in the celebration of the New Year. And it shows a Japan that is rich in ritual, that has lively festivals, and partakes in seasonal celebrations like New Year. And often those celebrations took the place in the form of music and dance that were performed outdoors in fields or along streets. And the figures and characters in this scroll are so distinctive that you'll also notice them throughout the exhibition in signage and banners throughout the art center. So when you see the banners outside the art center or throughout, those are actually taken from this scroll. Now, it was an interesting experience installing this, because traditionally in the museum, we show more contemporary to modern work, not usually work of this age. So to have the representatives from the Kiyosone and our conservator out and slowly unroll these hand scrolls, and as we decided which scene to show, there was a real sense of privilege in being able to see the painting revealed in a way that it has only a limited number of times throughout its life. This is not like something that was on a daily basis opened up and shared. So to kind of have it shared with us in that intimate moment was amazing, but also since it was created to be viewed in kind of a linear narrative manner, to see it slowly open only further emphasized that storytelling and the unique personality and character of each figure in the scroll is fascinating. You can start to imagine a whole story building around them, and a lot of them represent different key figures that would be in that festival. But probably the most important, the most brilliant thing that I go back to is really the color. And I also think it's important, as I said at the beginning, for people coming to realize that yes, we have these phenomenal prints, but it's really these one-of-a-kind paintings that make the exhibit so strong. So this artist, Miyagawa Chōshun, was also fairly interesting. He was born in 1683, died in 1753, so only 33 years after he painted this scroll. He is, like all the artists in our exhibition, an ukiyo-e artist, and he was the founder of the Miyagawa school, obviously named after him. But that school was unique in that they are the only artists, ukiyo-e artists, or among the few ukiyo-e artists, who never did woodblock prints. Perhaps part of that is because it's earlier on, before maybe the woodblock prints took off. But this is all hand-painted material. He's also interesting because some of his other work that's out that he did and some of his pupils did was kind of risque as well. But he was a fascinating person, and much like Hokusai, who we cover extensively in the exhibition, had an interesting life and interesting things happened to him. So about a year before he died, he was commissioned by an artist to perform some restoration work. And he was not paid for his work. And after he was not paid, an altercation broke out between the artist who commissioned him and his son, who actually killed that artist. And consequently, Chōshun was banished from Edo for a year. So in one of the last 2 years of his life, he was actually banished from the city of Edo. That's just a peek into one of the many works that are on display at the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. I don't think just describing them or showing them does them justice. You have to come in and see them. This collection really is exquisite. And I wanted to remind you of a few things coming up, different ways that you can explore it. So this coming weekend, which is the 21st, this Saturday, the 21st of June, we are actually having a Japan Fest at the college in coordination, at the Art Center in coordination with the exhibit. There'll be performances, activities, all free of charge. You don't even need a ticket to the exhibit to see that. We may move it indoors because it's going to be very warm this weekend, but that only means it will be wonderfully air conditioned. And people coming to that free event will also obviously have a chance to buy tickets to go admission to the exhibition. But it's a really wonderful opportunity, and it's just part of so much programming that we have surrounding this exhibition. So I just want to end by reminding everyone that if you have already gone, if you've kept your ticket, you can use that to come back to any of our programming. And to see the full list of our programming, all you have to do is visit our website, the ccma.org or hokusai2025.org. So just a short little pod this week. We'll be back next week with another interview. But please like and subscribe to this podcast if you want to hear more from the Cleve Carney Museum of Art. And make sure to follow us on all the socials. We're also on TikTok now. So thank you for listening, and talk